So earlier this year, when we launched our new series, This Movie Exists, I mentioned I didn't really know what it meant for the future of Schlocktober, whether I'd move the tradition there, since it's more of a movie-centered thing, or keep doing it as a yearly big picture event, since it might be odd to have two movie things going for a whole month, and well, with that series still being new and finding its footing, my read right now is that the future is still the future, so I'm splitting the difference and doing a cross-promotion. You're gonna get a more old-school Schlocktober classic version of at least two flicks here on Big Picture in a slightly different format, and a robust, different recipe combo version with the same two because they're a series over on TME, which, yes, also gives us more traffic for the month. What do you want me to say?
I'm in debt up to my eyeballs.
Yeah, pretty much that. Anyway, how long have I been doing this bit? 13 years, and in all that time we've only seen Vincent Price show up really a couple times? That feels wrong. So this year, only Vincent Price. A complicated, and many would say underappreciated or even underutilized, which sounds odd considering he made well over 100 movies and even more TV, radio, and theater appearances, known for playing larger-than-life but not always over-the-top and often oddly sympathetic villains, mostly but not exclusively in horror and science fiction films, with a cutting, sometimes catty sense of sarcastic humor. Vincent Price was a sought-after character star as early as the 1940s, but by the 1960s and 70s, with many other vintage horror and thriller stars of Golden Age Hollywood, even just a few years his senior, either too far into semi-retirement or poor health to ride the then-incoming waves of nostalgia, camp appreciation, retro-gothic irony, the Euro-horror invasion, etc., Price found himself ideally positioned as the classy elder statesman but with an edge actor who could reliably show up, give 110%, and never let on if he thought the material was beneath him, even if it probably was. Basically, imagine if Ian McKellen and Nicolas Cage were the same guy.
I am afraid, madam, that he has made his final crossing to that Stygian shore.
What?
He's dead. Are you some dark-winged messenger from beyond? Answer me, monster. Tell me truly. Shall I ever hold again that radiant maiden whom the angels call Lenore?
How the hell should I know?
What a fall. All the way down the stairs. It's wonderful. But then you always were good at falling from a great height.
Can't compare, my dear Geoffrey, with your famous death scenes, which you have played so brilliantly. And for so many years, bitch.
Today, in 2024, if most people think Vincent Price, I imagine what comes to mind is memorable facial expression and iconic delivery. So, here's the Abominable Dr. Phibes, a movie where his face can't move and he doesn't even open his mouth. Gotta love someone who's open to a challenge. Okay, so just to knock it out of the way up front, the hook of the Doctor Phibes franchise is that these are villain protagonist movies where we mainly follow the bad guy as the audience POV character instead of the ostensible good guys. But just because we see what Dr. Phibes does or is going to do before his victims or the cops, yeah, that doesn't actually mean the movie is going to tell us what he's doing or why he's doing it any earlier than the good guys figure it out. So these are still really strange movies about a really odd villain. We're just spending more screen time with him because it's more interesting that way, not because it necessarily makes any more sense. Case in point, this guy playing the organ with the clockwork robot backup band and the cloak at the beginning, that's Dr. Anton Phibes. The girl assistant is Volnavia. Why are they lowering a birdcage into a car in the basement? What is in the birdcage? Why does this process require musical accompaniment and a costume change for both of them? Or any process period when apparently they're the only ones involved in it, especially when we haven't been told who these people are and just kind of have to assume one of them must be the Abominable Dr. Phibes because the movie is called that? Only one of those questions will ever be answered. The cage has killer bats in it, and they went to put them in this guy's house.
Good morning.
And Scotland Yard is on the case.
Ooh, they're nasty looking little blighters, aren't they?
Seen them in Mandalay. It's like your throat dry, they were.
Yeah, well, that's where they belong, in the tropics. I mean, not here, not in a place like this. Yes, all right, thank you very much. Take them all off to the laboratory, would you?
Right, sir.
And have them double-checked for rabies.
Yes, sir.
Now, Morgan,
Yes, sir?
Where the hell are you?
On my beer, sir.
Oh, so you are. When you're finished up there, I want you to question the butler again. Oh, don't take him out like that. At least cover his face up.
So to answer your next obvious question, is this a horror movie or a comedy? Well, it's an American International Pictures film from 1971 with Vincent Price, so the answer is yes.
Well, there was another surgeon who died. A Dr. Thornton.
What about him?
It was more the way he died. This reminded me of it. He was stung to death by bees in his library.
Bees in his library?
Basically, by the time this came out, the successful producers of B-movies and genre fare that had been in the game for a while and wanted to stay there but hadn't yet or just didn't plan to segue over into the darker, grimier grindhouse scene or full-out avant-garde horror mode basically embraced an if you liked it, then we meant to do it approach to audience appreciation. Are the people scared? Good, we got their money. Are they laughing at it? Good, we still got their money. But also, the Abominable Dr. Phibes is actually a pretty lean, style-first, second, third, everything else, distant 10th, back-and-forth experiential loop of a movie once it hits its groove. Apart from a fig-leaf narrative conceit that this is all technically taking place in 1925, so they don't have even 70s modern forensics tools to solve any of the crimes right away, you're basically watching the most flamboyant bad guy the filmmakers could think up doing a killing spree with the most unnecessarily elaborate and over-designed deaths he can think up, and then the ultimate caricatures of dry English inspectors show up to, oh my, I do say that's a bit of business now, isn't it? What? Over the results and increasingly bewildered, but also increasingly detached frustratedness.
Medical men die every day.
I'm aware of that, sir.
Good. They're composed of the same flesh and blood as you and I.
I'm aware of that too, sir. I happen to have seen rather a lot of their flesh and blood in the past few days.
Now, this is most unsettling. Thank God the newspapers have been slow in picking up these stories so far.
Well, we've managed to withhold most
I
of
don't propose to go into the seriousness of this, Crow, but if the press do get hold of this...
We'd have a disaster on our hands.
What the hell do you think we got at the moment?
But okay, since, like I said, part of the gimmick of the movie is following the villain, but still being mostly in the dark as to what the villain's whole deal is a lot of the time, pretty much right up until it's almost over, this is what's going on. Anton Phibes was a wealthy doctor whose beloved wife died during a surgical procedure. On hearing of her death, he races home to England from Switzerland and supposedly also dies himself in a car crash, but clearly did not, as he is now stalking around having sworn to kill the 9 surgeons he blames for said wife's death. That's Carolyn Munro playing the wife, by the way. She was considered really hot stuff in B-movies at the time, and it's sort of an inside joke of the film that she only ever appears as a dead body or a photograph.
9 killed you, 9 shall die, and be returned your loss. 9 times 9, 9 killed you, 9 shall die, 9 eternities in doom.
It's not exactly clear how Dr. Phibes survived. He's definitely not in one piece. We see him applying prosthetics, his face doesn't actually work, he has to plug a speaker cord into a port on his throat to talk. We even see him eat and drink by putting his food somewhere behind his head, I guess. Like pretty much everything else about him, the mandate here is just to make everything he does as ostentatiously weird and complicated as possible so the movie will be interesting. To that end, Phibes' murder theme is the 10 plagues of Egypt. So he kills people with, say, a swarm of locusts to represent the plague of locusts. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Draining all of a victim's blood for the plague of blood. Again, kind of makes sense. Or tricking them into wearing a mechanized frog mask that crushes their head at a costume party to represent the plague of frogs. Okay, a little more obscure. Well, Phibes himself is wearing special medallions representing ancient Hebrew symbols for each plague during the kills, which he then transfers to busts of each intended victims and lightly burns. Presumably, he made the busts himself, the last part of that ritual, again, being conducted seemingly only for the benefit of himself and Valnavia. Oh, and they're never going to tell us in either of these movies who Valnavia is and what she's getting out of any of this. Is she a robot, like the members of his Clockwork Band? Is she a demon familiar, like did he make a deal with hell to not die or something? There's not a lot of how in these movies. It's mostly what. And then each time, Scotland Yard shows up after the fact to go, "Oh my, well, that's pretty unusual if I don't say so myself."
It appears to have been fired by a catapult, sir.
Oh, brilliant.
And this time, due no doubt to some organizational oversight, you arrived there before the crime. But, as I've come to expect from you two, that made little difference.
To the film's immense credit, this is actually the only Mad Doctor movie I can think of where all of this ridiculous amount of just going wild with the art design for his own amusement aspect of Phibes' plan actually makes kind of explicit, unironic character sense, because it's also the only Mad Doctor movie that bothers to remember that doctor doesn't have to mean scientist. Phibes was a concert organist with doctorates in music and theology. Yeah, the Abominable Dr. Phibes is not a mad scientist movie, it's a serial killer movie about a mad fine art scholar. How great is that? But yeah, so in that context, shit like this actually kind of makes more sense. He's basically craft fair Jigsaw.
It's brass. He's cast the thing in bloody brass.
And actually, his device for the firstborn plague against the main surgeon does feel pretty much just like a jigsaw trap if those movies had been made for this period.
That is an x-ray of your son's rib cage. A tiny key has been lodged close to his heart. It will unlock the halter around your son's neck and will free the trolley in a few moments. Acid will be released into that tube. My wife existed only 6 minutes on the operating table, and then she was dead. You murdered her.
No.
Murdered her. When the acid reaches him, he will have a face like mine.
And as for the final one, the Plague of Darkness, that turns out to be for him is the idea. Yeah, Phibes actually does give his final nemesis basically a fair shot at winning or losing and hops into an escape pod of embalming himself alive next to his wife in a tomb the police can't discover.
He's gone.
Meaning the bad guy kind of sort of gets away with it, or at least wins here, because if the bad guy is that much more fun than the good guys, you might as well just let him have this one.
Well, what about...
Of course, you might think quietly slipping away from the finale into basically a retro stasis pod feels like a sequel setup, and that's exactly what this was. And we'll get into that one next time. So there's a term of art in movie making, or maybe there used to be, I don't know if anyone actually uses it anymore in this context, they used to call just business, or doing some business, or a bit of business, that pretty much just referred to stuff happening on screen for the sake of having stuff happen on screen. Like giving a character a prop to play with, or a task to do, or making a specific action need to follow a set of steps, or adding steps to a process, or making some contraption or procedure more elaborate than it necessarily needed to be, because people showed up to look at the movie and you want to give them something to look at, even if what's actually happening isn't important or moving the plot forward, or if it is important or moving the plot forward but isn't in itself altogether fully engaging, because, once upon a time when people watched a movie, it was assumed they were watching the movie, not kinda listening to the story while they folded their fucking laundry. So things like giving the supervillain a cat to pet, or a specific sequence of buttons and dials they had to throw to activate their death traps, that's a bit of business. Slapstick comedy guys like the Three Stooges being incapable of completing basic work tasks without falling all over themselves, and thus adding dozens of extra difficult steps to simple jobs, that's some business. Physical slapstick is pretty much all doing some business. Tokusatsu and anime heroes having elaborate transformation sequences triggered by catchphrases and poses, yeah, it saves on animation, recycled footage, eats up screen time, but also bit of business. Hell, when bad guys have a bunch of henchmen whose job is seemingly just hanging around around in the background gesturing at things or looking busy because it reinforces the illusion there's a big functional operation that goes on outside of the main story, that's the definition of doing a bit of business. Something should always be going on and it should always look interesting, even if it doesn't make sense. In fact, especially if it doesn't make sense. Case in point, the two Doctor Phibes movies do not really make a lot of sense if you make the mistake of trying to make sense of them, and they are all about doing some business all of the time.
Give me excess of it. No.
You've seen lots of movies where the villain does the Phantom of the Opera play the organ routine? Okay, well this guy has a whole band. Wait, even better, his own creepy robot band. Dr. Phibes can't move his face and his voice comes out of speakers, that's already pretty unsettling. But what if he also has to plug an audio cable into his neck and walk over to plug the other end to the nearest speaker whenever he wants to talk? That's giving your star and movie a bit of business to do. Or when he puts food in the back of his neck or wherever that goes. He's gonna kill people with gimmicks? They better be gimmicky. These movies are constantly standing on a bit of business.
I suppose we'd better take him down. Why? I don't understand. Whose mind could conceive of such a bizarre way to kill?
A man called Phibes, sir. Dr. Anton Phibes.
And thus, a very strange first movie, full of business, was big business for American International Pictures, and that meant sequel.
Lifeblood then flowed back into Phibes. Great wheels and motors sprung into motion. And Dr. Phibes once more walked upon the earth.
So 1 year later in release order, but 3 years later in universe for 1972's Dr. Phibes Rises Again, Phibes' automated tomb reactivates and summons a, somehow again inexplicably rejuvenated Volnavia, now played by a new actress as Virginia North retired after the original movie to marry Sir Gordon White, aka Baron Gordon White, Lord White of Hull, the super rich guy Terrence Stamp's character in Wall Street was based on. And in a bit of retcon, or at least new information, it turns out Phibes' sleeping death was part of a bigger plan not just for evading capture, but granting himself and his late wife Victoria eternal life by seeking out the river of life from ancient Egyptian mythology.
There, my beloved, awaits the key to resurrection for you and eternal life for both of us.
Which I think was more of a metaphor even to the ancient Egyptians, but here it's an actual literal river, but whatever, it's that kind of movie. Anyway, his special crypt and most of the plan was timed to a specific alignment of the moon and planets wherein this was possible, and he just needs to go upstairs and get out a special map to the location and instructions for setting off the ritual he'd already scouted years ago, but when he goes to get it, there's been a small problem with the upkeep of the property while he was, dead for 3 years.
No. While I slept in sweet oblivion, who dared destroy my house? The safe. Could it still be here? What fiend has taken it? Only one who seeks eternal life as I do? Biederbeck.
And so here's our gimmick for the movie. Biederbeck is another wealthy, eccentric, not exactly good guy with a secret. In this case, he's a centuries-old immortal kept young by way of a mysterious magic elixir that he's just about run out of, and he's stolen Phibes' map to the River of Life so he can use that as the new source of renewed youth for himself and his lover Diana.
You're a strange man, acclaimed as one of the most brilliant minds in the Western Hemisphere, and yet you seem obsessed with...
Yes?
The spiritual, the mythical aspect of life.
He's played by Robert Quarry, an actor who AIP was supposedly grooming to be a younger, less expensive replacement for Price as top-billed horror star around this time, so there's a bit of a meta aspect to this, and yeah, that's what we're doing. Phibes against another weird guy in a race for a treasure, which should be, interesting as riffs on a premise go. Unfortunately, just as Quarry wasn't a bad actor, but nobody is Vincent Price, there's just no out-Phibesing Dr. Phibes. I mean, how can you compete for screen time with someone whose plan to take out one henchman is, in order, robot snakes, to create a false sense of security about the real snake, to make you call for a doctor so they can trigger a booby-trapped phone. Were there perhaps other ways to ensure that henchman picked up the phone? Sure, probably, but then they wouldn't have gotten to make and use the robot snakes, and where would the fun in that have been?
They won't steal the silverware. I've glued that to the ceiling.
Dad, I understand the silverware, but why the dog?
You understand the silverware? Cuckoo.
Plus, if Phibes didn't do things like stuff his victims into giant bottles and throw them off ships, because what else is he going to do with the giant bottle he brought on the ship with him, or insist on bringing his robot backup band and organ with him to Egypt, Scotland Yard might never figure out any of this was happening in the first place.
A man's body had been washed up. Fallen overboard? In a sense, yes, sir.
Men fall overboard all the time. That's what the locals are for. That's what I complain about in this department.
This one was inside a bottle, sir.
Do what?
He was inside a bottle. Glass it was. About 7 feet long. Corked.
Also, wait a minute. Robot band, mechanized animals, crazy guy who won't die?
And he always comes back.
Huh. That's interesting.
On arrival, I discovered the man's body surrounded by balls. Now, look here, Trud.
There's some fun business in this sequel, including Phibes killing guys with a giant screw press, a controlled sandstorm, and the whole idea that Phibes went to the trouble of interior decorating an Egyptian tomb after discovering it, just so it'd be properly furnished when he got back there later.
Lights, music, Valnavia, a song of celebration. Unveil the band.
But the whole other sort of antagonist angle never really comes together with Biederbeck. He just can't match Phibes as a character, and it detracts from the more fun contrast of watching the Scotland Yard guys trip over their own feet trying to keep up with him.
Hackett. He has nothing to say, sir. What an amazing thing. Don't do that, Trump. Sir? Fella's toenail.
It's fine, it's just not as good as the first one.
Where is she?
Waiting, as we all must wait.
Play your foul games with me, Phibes. If ever a man deserves to die, it's you.
You cannot threaten the dead with death, my friend.
Phibes! I beg you! Let me come with you!
It's not the end of the world.
Somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow.
Both movies were pretty successful for AIP and for Price, though, basically opening up a whole new avenue subgenre of themed proto-slasher serial killer movies that would experience a mini-boom throughout the wider 70s horror wave, even as plans for a third Phibes movie never really materialized. I think they were going to do The Bride of Doctor Phibes or something. Instead, Price would make several more movies about over-the-top killers that would get grimier and more violent as they went, with specific motifs, and you can hear more about those on Schlocktober later throughout the month.
Devil, take me. Not for some considerable time, I trust.
So, you enjoyed Vincent Price going all style and sort of minimal personal restraint, at least as facial and verbal gesticulation is concerned, while the aesthetics went full tilt stylistically wild in a spooky but gory but somehow also kinda cozy and old-fashioned way in the Abominable Dr. Phibes movies. Well, how'd you like to try the exact literal opposite of that?
It's a grave tale, Snipe, and difficult to write, but I'm sure you can rise to the occasion. The
dragon wing of night o'erspreads the earth. My half-supped spear that frankly would have fed, pleased with this dainty bait, thus goes to bed.
Theater of Blood isn't the first, last, or probably best remembered of the classic horror stars playing themed serial killers as meta riffs on their stature in popular culture features unleashed in the wake of the Doctor Phibes movies, but it might be the most interesting for the sheer brutality and nastiness of it matched against the over-the-top nature of the premise, and literally the only one actor could possibly make this work nature of the premise, which features Vincent Price as Edward Lionheart, a failed actor who goes on a killing spree against pretentious theater critics inspired by the most brutal death scenes from the works of William Shakespeare.
It's a movie.
Any good?
Very good. It won the Academy Award.
Oh, for what?
For best movie ever made.
Right from the jump, this guy gets lured by the police to supposedly help oversee the eviction of some homeless drug addicts who've taken up residence in a condemned theater, only to find himself made the star attraction in a very literal reenactment of the death scene from Julius Caesar.
Constable! Constable! A little help here.
Oh, pardon me, thou bleeding piece of earth, that I am meek and gentle with these butchers.
It's you. But you're dead.
No. No, another critical miscalculation on your part, dear boy.
Okay, so everybody got the basic idea here? Well, hope so, because this is another one that kicks off in media res and only gradually explains what's actually happening, to whom, by whom, and why, the closer it gets to the ending.
Yes, well, when I see 5 weirdos dressed in togas stabbing a guy in the middle of the park in full view of 100 people, I shoot the bastards. That's my policy.
That was a Shakespeare in the Park production of Julius Caesar, you moron.
Produced by Harbor Productions and Cineman rather than the international horror mainstays like AIP or even British specialists like Hammer or Amicus, and often called a personal favorite of Price's, possibly just for the fact that he got to perform a bunch of classic Shakespeare standards that he'd always wanted to do on screen but could never get cast in the full versions of. This came out 1 year after Doctor Phibes Rises Again and sort of feels like a spiritual sequel but also like a thematic inversion, though like that predecessor it once again starts off with a killing spree already underway and expects us to just catch up. The better you know your Shakespeare and or your inside baseball jokes about the shifting power dynamics of the English stage scene of the early 1970s, the further ahead you're going to be of the rest of the audience, at least in terms of the gimmicks.
Juliet's so much pasta fazool, Romeo doesn't want her anymore. Whoa, tough crowd. They're booing Shakespeare.
Which, yes, does mean that the non-murder parts of this deliver the very funny spectacle of the various cops and detectives sheepishly admitting that, they probably should know, but don't really remember their Shakespeare all that well from school, and then having to read through, like, the Cliff Notes as part of their investigation, because, yeah, this wasn't fucking around. Our premise here is Scream, but for theater nerds, but also, instead of hating random high school kids, it hates theater critics.
What's the next murder, Inspector?
Intended murder, you mean, Sergeant? It's Titus Andronicus. A couple of chaps are mutilated and beheaded. Another stabbed and thrown in a pit. And to cap it all, some queen is made eat her children baked in the pie.
One always felt that you were striving to be complimentary, but not always complimentary.
Well, critics make errors. After all, we're all human.
An opinion I find myself incapable of sharing.
Yeah, okay, let's back up again. Like I said, as part of how proto-slasher movies like this and the Phibes cycle held the audience interest, is that the killings start right away. We figure out the killer's theme as the investigation does, and really only find out why they're doing this to put all the stakes at full blast right at the finish. But for our purpose here, on Schlocktober, the eventual setup is that Price's Edward Lionheart was an aging star of traditional British theater scene who had been long criticized as an over-actor too married to the classical stage, only performing Shakespeare, and it's later implied, rejecting the newer modern method acting or Stanislavski system that had come to dominate his craft in the 20th century.
I understand that the greatest actor of all time never earned your approval for one single performance. Never. Not one good review.
Edwina, in his entire career, your father refused to appear in anything but Shakespeare. A truly great actor illuminates the present as well as the past. I attacked your father because I thought I could goad him into the 20th century.
What do you want, Devlin?
After having expected to be finally awarded a British Theatre Critics Association Best Actor prize for a self-produced, self-starring run of Shakespeare productions he'd intended as the crowning run of his career, only to see it instead given to an unseen by us in the audience rising star of the method scene, Lionheart snaps and confronts the critics group at their after party.
This year, my season of Shakespeare was the shining jewel in the crown of the immortal bard. Quite insane.
He must be drunk.
But you, with your overweening malice, give the award to a twitching, mumbling boy who can barely grunt his way through an incomprehensible performance.
Only to snap again when they take the occasion to mock him and supposedly takes his own life.
There's the respect that makes calamity. So long life!
I gotta admit, every movie that comes after this and stole the Shakespeare-quoting villain gimmick kinda diluted it, but as screenwriting cheats go, we don't have to write good dialogue, we'll just write an excuse in the plot for our character to quote the greatest dialogue ever written is a really good cheat code.
Be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep no more. Now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this son of York.
If it's 400 years old, that means legally all his stuff is out of copyright.
What do you say?
It's free.
But yeah, the rest of this you can probably guess. Lionheart didn't die and was instead nursed back to health by a community of homeless meth drinkers. That was a particularly tragic subset of addiction that mostly existed in the early to mid-20th century urban UK that involved drinking denatured alcohol, aka rubbing alcohol, ethanol, etc. It's as dark as you're thinking.
Oh, brave new world that had such lovely creatures in it.
Whom he has assembled into his personal theater company for his now unfolding revenge scheme, using his skills at acting, costuming, makeup, knowledge of Shakespeare's most gruesome plays, etc. to exact brutal vengeance on the critics who humiliated him. So we get that stabbing from Caesar, the horse-dragging from Troilus and Cressida, the beheading from Cymbeline, drowning in a cask of wine from Richard III, tricking a guy into strangling his own wife because that's the reference to Othello, electrocution because that counts as burning Joan of Arc in Henry VI Part 1, which is kind of a reach, and I think they mostly wanted an excuse for Price to do a whole shtick in this hairdresser outfit.
Hello. I'm Butch. Hey, dishy hair. Can't wait to get my hands on it.
Even the pound of flesh from Merchant of Venice.
It was a pound exactly, was it not?
A pound, no more, no less.
This is 2 ounces over.
And before you bring it up...
There is no murder in the Merchant of Venice.
Excuse me, Inspector. It's just arrived from Mr. Devlin.
What's in the box?
Not till you give me the
What's
gun.
in the fucking box?
It's Lionheart, all right. Only he would have the temerity to rewrite Shakespeare.
Oh, and he also does the pies from Titus Andronicus that used to be one of the more obscure Shakespeare references, but now everyone knows it because of the Julie Taymor movie and that one South Park episode. But instead of feeding a critic his kids, he uses the guy's 2 poodles.
2 dogs, 2 pies. We knew that Monsieur would be hungry.
Which feels like the only thing that they wouldn't be able to do in a today version of this movie, which, you know, I'm supposed to say that's hypocritical, but I honestly don't feel like it is. I kind of agree with James from the Bucket of Blood review over on Cinemassacre. Kill all the humans you want. It always bugs me when movies kill off animals. Like, this is the one thing that feels a little beyond the pale. Anyway, Lionheart also recreates the duel from Romeo and Juliet on his main nemesis so he can monologue more.
Even an unpolished oaf like you must be familiar with the duel scene.
leaves him alive so he can do the blinding from King Lear in order to force him to admit that they were wrong about his talents after all. But things there go awry, and look, how did you think something like this was going to go ultimately?
Help your master!
Upon you, murderers, traitors all! Oh, my daughter!
How does my royal lord? How fares your majesty?
Howl! 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 Oh, you are men of stone! Here he is! Had I your tongues and eyes, I'd use them so that heaven's vault should crack.
Read those lines from King Lear.
Yes, it was a fascinating performance. But of course he was madly overacting as usual. But you must admit he did know how to make an exit.
That's Ian Hendry as the Survivor critic and Diana Rigg as Lionheart's daughter and accomplice. They were both OG cast members of the original TV Avengers series. There's a lot of really good actors in this, given the nature of the material. The director Douglas Hickox once said that it was one of the easiest jobs he ever had because there were so many great actors in the movie. All he had to do as director was open the dressing room door and let the cameras go. Oh, and Rigg also said she thought this was her best movie, period.
Lionheart, think of your daughter. Think of what you've done to her with this insane vendetta of yours.
My daughter? What have I done to you, my daughter?
Good my lord, you have begot me, bred me, loved me. I return those duties back as are right fit.
Tell Sassy. I wanted to know it was me.
Viewed in modern context, Theatre of Blood is probably most noteworthy for the novelty of the premise. You don't really need to know more than the gimmick of Shakespeare-themed serial killer versus critics to know whether or not you're going to like this, and how much fun it is to watch Price give 5 or 6 actual award-worthy Shakespearean monologue readings in the midst of what's otherwise another nasty murder movie.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. Here under leave of Brutus and the rest, come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honorable man.
But my ongoing takeaway is that especially if you watch it right after the more fanciful and colorful Phibes movies, what a gnarly, nasty, grimy, unrepentantly dark, and devoid of even mild whimsy piece of work it is. There's not even a tiny bit of stylization to anything that isn't meant to be part of the decaying and decrepit theater dress business that Lionheart's crew makes their whole aesthetic. The cinematography dips into handheld and verite mode a lot, and the overall tone is an unrelenting upfront, what do you want? This is the tail end of Heat Administration England tour of Londonian misery porn. But it's also the rare horror film where everyone is completely unsympathetic, except for the dogs. I feel bad for the 2 dogs still. Like, on a meta level, it's fun to ironically root for Lionheart because he's a fun slasher antagonist, and especially if you also find method acting tiresome, and yes, because it's really Vincent Price winking back at the audience and getting some measure of vicarious revenge for being underappreciated and called an overactor by his real-life critics.
How many actors have you destroyed? As you destroyed me. Ah! What do you know of the blood, sweat, and toil of a theatrical production? Of the dedication of the men and the women in the noblest profession of all? How could you know, you talentless fools who spew vitriol on the creative efforts of others because you lack the ability to create yourselves?
But, you know, character-wise, when it's all revealed, he really is just this petty dude who cares way too much about what his own critics thought, and the critics, meanwhile, are these awful elitist snobs who look down on actual artists and are sleazy to their assistants, and yeah, some of them really have this coming. It's a really profoundly apocalyptic, cynical vision of its own tiny, insular world where a creature like Lionheart is almost doing everyone a favor, burning it all down and taking himself out with it.
Come, fire! Consume this petty world, and in its ashes, let my memory lie.
But it's also a lot of fun in its own very, very dark way, and if you're even a little bit of a theater person and you've never seen it, yeah, fix that yesterday.
One is irresistibly reminded of a ham sandwich. My reputation. Hark, villain! I will grind your bones to dust.
So this year, you've enjoyed Vincent Price partly inventing the slasher who commits to a theme genre as the fancifully flamboyant retro killer in the Abominable Dr. Phibes movies, and watched him go the opposite direction as a brutally gnarly era contemporary serial slasher with a Shakespeare hang-up in Theater of Blood. How about something somewhere in the middle? Specifically, where the same producers behind the Phibes movies saw the actually very positive reviews for Theater of Blood and said, shit, we should do one like that.
I am not afraid. There is always room for more in the coffin of time.
So here's Madhouse, also sometimes re-released as The Revenge of Dr. Death and based on the novel Devil Day by Angus Hall, which once again finds Price playing a meta-joke riff on the subject of being Vincent Price, here a wealthy Hollywood horror star named Paul Toombs, famous for his recurring role as a villain named Dr. Death, who based on what we see is a killer surgeon who may or may not also possess supernatural powers and kills victims, usually beautiful women, using torture, traps, and surgical tools.
We must work fast before rigor mortis sets in. Hand me the scalpel.
We don't really get a clear extended look at any of the Dr. Death movies because part of the film's meta gimmick is that almost all the footage of Toombs' performances are repurposed from Price's actual earlier films owned by producer American International Pictures, specifically The Raven, Tales of Terror, Scream and Scream Again, The Pit and the Pendulum, Haunted Palace, and House of Usher, which is why the film also includes a guest appearance credit for both Basil Rathbone and Boris Karloff, despite both actors having died several years before the film was made.
Mind and body at peace entirely.
Remember this? You were brilliant.
Basil. I had some real help on that one.
To the story, on the night of a big New Year's Eve party where Toombs announces his engagement to his much younger fiancée Ellen just after a screening of the latest Dr. Death masterpiece, a sleazy porn producer, and speaking of meta gags, yep, that's Warwick Quarry from Dr. Phibes Rises Again.
Well, that's Hollywood for you, sweetheart. He's on the make, she's on the take.
Introduces himself and pretty much just to be a dick about it, reveals that said fiancé is, unbeknownst to Toombs, a former adult film star from his company and his former girlfriend. Toombs doesn't exactly react great to either piece of news and she leaves the party, leading to them being separated exactly long enough for him to apparently pass out and her to be attacked in her room by someone wearing a Dr. Death costume. So when Toombs wakes up and goes to apologize,
I shouldn't have said what I did.
Fast forward many years to then present day 1974 and the world has moved on, but the Dr. Death murder remains unsolved. Most people believe Toombs was the killer. He claims to have no memory one way or the other. There's no actual evidence showing he did it, but even he isn't really confident that it wasn't him, or rather that it wasn't Dr. Death.
Did you do it?
I don't know.
The only way to conquer your fear of the past is to face it. I made you come here to bring you back to life.
But you're not bringing me back to life. You're bringing Dr. Death back to life. And he terrifies me. I'm terrified of what he's done. And I'm terrified of what he still may do.
But because it's still an infamous character, both Paul and his creative partner Peter Cushing, yep, him too, as actor-turned-screenwriter Herbert Flay, jointly own the rights to the Dr. Death IP, a TV studio that wants to reboot their franchise as a series has convinced Toombs to come to England to reprise the role.
How did this happen? That's a very good question.
The only way they can secure the funding. Oh, and the executive at the network making the show is the producer who caused the scene at the New Year's Eve party.
That just raises further questions.
And if you're thinking, okay, on the one hand, all of that sounds depressingly like a series of very poor decisions that still actually would 100% happen in the entertainment business in reality, but don't generally happen in movies about the entertainment business because reality often sounds more convoluted than fiction, hang on, it keeps going. Toombs keeps being accosted on his boat trip to England and then again after his arrival by a scheming starlet who steals his watch and tries to blackmail him into getting a role on the new Dr. Death show.
All I need is a break. Then I wouldn't tell the newspapers a thing.
Miss Peters, as they say in horror movies, you will come to a bad end. Out. Gentlemen, promise no reporters, please.
Hey, Dr. Death, who's this?
Miss Kiss of Death.
Come on, lads.
Come on, out you
Come
go
on.
now.
Look, I want to
Look, I
know.
know it.
He's also staying in Herbert Flay's creepy mansion in the middle of nowhere while they make the show, and it turns out Flay has actually been married for several years to one of the former leading ladies from one of the Dr. Death movies who was disfigured in a car fire, went insane, and now lives in the basement talking to spiders.
How are my babies? How are my pretty, furry little babies? I used to laugh at stories of girls being beaten up by guys just for the hell of it. These guys got scared. They set the car on fire and pushed it down the hill. When I came out of it, I wasn't pretty anymore.
All of which is information he, for some reason, has not informed Toombs about before this.
Why didn't you tell me about Faye?
Investigations began into the cause of
I thought it might upset you.
You're right. It did.
Once again, things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday!
Apparently because they called the movie Madhouse and there needed to be a madhouse in it.
Logical.
Also, the actress stalker followed Toombs there and gets killed by, yes, someone dressed like Dr. Death in a manner that mimics one of the Dr. Death movies.
The Peters murder was done with a pitchfork. Exactly like the one in this film.
If Paul Toombs copied it, then he's a fool.
Oh, I don't think he copied it deliberately, sir. I believe he's psychologically disturbed.
The movie actually runs for a while before that plot point comes up, even though it was kind of marketed as that being the whole premise. This makes the police suspicious and also brings out her parents, who immediately try to blackmail Toombs with the watch.
Our little girl had it.
The girl on the ship.
The girl you seduced.
The girl you done in.
Give me that watch! Give me that watch! Give it to me!
You'll have to pay.
£10,000.
And then they get killed by whoever it is wearing this costume.
Sacre bleu! The deadly poke of Zorro!
Is it Toombs? Is it not Toombs? We're meant to wonder, but on the set of the reboot, it becomes readily apparent that the sleazy producer's actual plan is to only keep Toombs around as Dr. Death for a short amount of time and then pass the role off to a new assistant character he's already cast with his girlfriend, which Toombs is not a fan of.
My assistant? Dr. Death never had an assistant.
Well, I figured we needed a little sex appeal in this series.
I said we must work fast before rigor mortis sets in. I didn't say in who.
We're recording, Paul.
And then someone kills her off using another Dr. Death movie reference. And even though we get another death scene involving a tampered trap rig that was apparently meant to kill Toombs and what appears to be a fight and chase scene where it appears that Toombs and an imposter Dr. Death are fighting each other, it looks pretty clear that even though there are too many other random suspects, it could as easily be Toombs having a split personality and some of the movie just might be happening in his head at this point.
Why did he take you again, Ellen? Was it because you were young? Because your eyes shone? And your lips smiled? Because you were life?
Heck, once the film's most sympathetic supporting character is killed off, Toombs is so convinced that he must be the one that did it, he delivers an all-timer hero-villain combo monologue and decides the only way he's going to be rid of Dr. Death is to take himself out himself.
Herbert and I created him between us. No, we didn't create him. He was there. We found him in ourselves, already there. And he will always be there. Man is born to live. He creates life. He welcomes life. He cherishes life. He creates new life. But deep in our souls, there lurks an instinct which welcomes death. It makes it easier when it comes. That's what we saw in the darkness. That is the sleeping phantom that we roused and formed and clothed in black. A phantom feeding on death, creating death, exulting in death. Oh, why didn't he take me? Now he must die. Lights! Camera! The death of Dr. Death.
Wow. You know, yeah, this is a really uneven, random, completely nonsensical movie overall, but yeah, wow, that is a hell of a way to end this. That's, wow, bravo. That is dark and very I guess it's still going.
And here's to the new Dr. Death, the film of his final performance.
Death of Dr. Death.
Another shocking twist!
You're dead! Why did you do it, my friend? You killed Ellen. And all of the others, too. You wanted everybody to think that it was me. Why, Herbert, why did you want to destroy me? You loved Dr. Death.
Yes! And I should have played him! Dr. Death is mine! I created the part for myself, but the studio gave it to you! You weren't a better actor. You were nothing until you played Dr. Death. He made you into a star. I killed Ellen, hoping to get rid of you. But the studio still wouldn't listen.
Of course. It's so simple. Wait, no it's not. It's needlessly complicated.
I am Dr. Death.
They like him now.
Perhaps there is no moral to this story.
Exactly. It's just a bunch of stuff that happened.
But it certainly was a memorable few days.
It's your favorite, Paul. Sour cream and red herrings.
Yeah, so Madhouse does not really make a single bit of sense in its logic, series of events, or the actions of anyone involved, and out of left field tone shifts between is this a realistic murder mystery versus the Spider Lady stuff, and Toombs suddenly doing a maybe not resurrection gag at the end are just bizarre.
And I'm his friend Jesus.
But there is a genuinely haunted quality to seeing Cushing and Price just unload what feels like a ton of very real meta on meta, looking back on the business of being an undervalued horror star baggage in the midst of this weird disposable feeling body count movie.
His surgery walls decorated with gallbladders, livers, and kidneys and...
Just like the great days, eh?
In our day in Hollywood, the monsters didn't need makeup. They just came as themselves.
It really only plays well paired with one of the other better films in this pseudo-cycle, like the two Phibes movies or Theater of Blood, but if you get a shot, it's pretty compelling in that regard, and there are some great moments. It's definitely not short on atmosphere, and Price is very good in it, even if it is sometimes hard to tell if he would genuinely rather be anywhere else, or if he's just very good at playing a guy who would rather be anywhere else. This one tends to be forgotten, but there's an argument that it shouldn't.
Why do you think that your films have been so very successful?
Well, I think it's because they're not about the ordinary, everyday world around us. They're about a world that's deep inside of us, a world of impulses and instincts that we have been taught to suppress.
That sounds a bit spooky, impulses. I mean, what sort of impulses?
Well, they're impulses that we don't dare admit, impulses that sometimes we don't even know we have. animal cruelty, brutal violence, and bloodlust. They're tamed and caged. Sometimes they prowl around inside of the cages that we've built for them. And then there comes a time in between our sleeping and our waking when they whisper to us that they want to be set free, but, well, we don't set them free. I think maybe that's why the pictures are successful.